You're tired. And you've been telling yourself it's because you've been working too hard. The hours have been long. The requests haven't stopped. You gave up 3 weekends in a row last quarter, and the quarter before that, and you keep thinking, if I can just get through this stretch, things will settle down. But they haven't settled. And something else has been creeping in, something harder to name than fatigue, a flatness, a going through the motions quality to work that used to feel like yours, a quiet suspicion that the thing draining you isn't the volume of the work, it's the work itself. Welcome to the Hub Brief. I'm AJ. Today, I want to challenge the most common story we tell about exhaustion in professional life and offer a different one that might explain more than you'd expect. The story most people tell is burnout. The story I want to tell today is boredom, and I want to be precise about what I mean, because this is not about being lazy or ungrateful or unable to handle pressure. This is about what happens when the work you're doing stops reflecting who you're becoming, and why rest, no matter how much of it you get, can't fix that. Let me start by validating something. You're not imagining it. The exhaustion is real. The sense that you're running on something that isn't quite full anymore, that's real too. I'm not here to tell you to push through, or to reframe your feelings, or to suggest a better morning routine is all you need. But I do want to name something that I think gets missed. We are very good at describing how we feel. We are not always as good at diagnosing why. In professional life, burnout has become the word we reach for first, for almost everything, because it carries a certain legitimacy. It doesn't ask uncomfortable questions about the work itself, or the role, or the choice to keep doing it. It says, you work too hard. You need to rest. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes, and I'd argue more often than we admit, the tiredness isn't from too much. It's from too little of the right thing. There are two very different conditions that can look like burnout from the outside. One of them is burnout. The other one masquerades as burnout, uses the same vocabulary, the same symptoms, and the same feeling of depletion, but requires a completely different response. If you treat one like the other, you'll spend time recovering from a problem you don't actually have, while the actual problem keeps growing underneath. Here's the distinction I want you to hold. Burnout is energy depletion. Too much demand, not enough recovery. The nervous system running at a level it can't sustain. The solution, genuinely, is rest. Reduce load, better boundaries, recovery time. What I'm describing is identity depletion. It looks like burnout. It feels like burnout. But the source isn't the volume of the work. The source is the mismatch between the work and the person doing it. Specifically, the mismatch between who you're being asked to be at work and who you actually are. Or more precisely, who you're in the process of becoming. You can be doing technically interesting work, well compensated work, respected work, and still feel this. Because the feeling isn't about quality or quantity, it's about fit. When the work reflects who you are, engagement comes easily. You bring something to it that isn't just effort, it's investment, it's identity. When the work doesn't reflect who you are, you can still do it. You might even do it very well, but it costs you more. Not because it's hard, because it requires you to be someone slightly different from yourself for 8 or 10 hours a day. And that has a different kind of cost. There's a concept in organizational psychology called identity continuity. The idea is simple. People thrive when there's a coherent thread between who they were, who they are, and who they're becoming. When that thread is intact, work has energy, not every day, but the general direction feels like growth, like you're adding something to yourself, not just delivering for others. Break that thread, and something starts to unravel, even when everything externally looks fine. In specialty pharma and hub operations, I see a specific version of this often. A high performing individual contributor gets promoted into a manager role. They're good at it. Their numbers are solid. Their team respects them. But they miss the work, not abstractly. They physically miss the specific act of solving the kind of problems they used to solve. The intake complexity. The prior auth case that was 3 systems deep. The exception that nobody else could navigate the way they could. And now they sit in meetings. They coach others through the work. They escalate and track and report and advocate. The contribution is real. The impact is measurable. But the thread is broken. They're no longer doing the thing that made them feel like themselves. And what they experience as burnout is actually something closer to grief. The loss of an identity that was built over years, and that the new role, however legitimate, doesn't know what to do with. I want to linger on that word for a moment. Grief, because we don't usually use it in a professional context. We use it when something ends, a relationship, a loss, a significant chapter of life. But identity loss in a career is a real form of grief. And it follows the same pattern. First, you don't name it. You just feel off. You work harder to compensate. You tell yourself you're adjusting. Then you start to notice you're performing more than you're engaging. You're doing the role without being in it. And eventually, if it goes unnamed long enough, it shows up as what everyone calls burnout. Not because you worked too hard, because you worked for too long as someone other than yourself. Rest doesn't fix grief. You have to go looking for what was lost. I want to pause here and give you something specific to sit with. Think back across the last 6 months of your work. Not the projects that went well, not the wins, not the performance review moments, the moments when the work felt like yours, when you were doing something and thought, this is what I'm here for. This is the version of me that showed up today. How long ago was that? How often does that happen now compared to 2 years ago? That gap between the frequency of those moments then and now, that's a data point worth sitting with. It doesn't mean your job is wrong for you. It doesn't mean you need to leave or change careers or blow up anything you've built. But it does mean something has shifted. And before you can do anything about it, you need to know what. Here's what I want you to hold. You are not the role that is exhausting you. The exhaustion is a signal, not a sentence. When your body tells you something is wrong, you don't assume the body is the problem. You look for the source. This is the same. The flatness you feel, the going through the motions quality I mentioned at the start, that is your identity looking for a way back in. Not your job identity, not your title. The part of you that is genuinely good at something specific. The part that is in the process of becoming better at it. The part that has more to give than the current role is asking for. That part doesn't disappear when the role changes. It looks for somewhere to go. And if it can't find it in the work, it shows up as restlessness, as the flatness, as the thing you've been calling burnout. You haven't worked too hard. You've worked hard at the wrong things for too long. So what do you do with this? I want to give you 3 moves. Not a framework, not a program, just 3 places to start. The first, name the actual feeling before you try to fix it. Tired is not the same as depleted. Depleted is not the same as disengaged. Disengaged is not the same as misaligned. Take one honest day, not a vacation day, just a regular Thursday, and track where your attention actually goes, not what's on your calendar, where your mind goes when it's free to wander. What do you read about by choice? What problems do you think through on a drive when nobody is watching? That tells you something real about what you're actually hungry for. In the past, when the work was right, you probably didn't need to track your attention. It went there on its own. That's the comparison point. The second, trace back to the last moment of genuine engagement. Not the last time you performed well, not the last time you were praised, the last time the work felt alive. What were you doing? Who were you being in that moment? And here's the follow-on question. Is there a version of your current role, even a small one, where you could do more of that? Not a new job, not a pivot, not a resignation letter. Just a shift in how you're allocating time and attention within what already exists. Most people don't need a completely new role. They need a bit more of the right thing inside the one they have. That distinction matters because one requires courage and the other requires clarity. Both are real, but they're not the same problem. The third move is harder. Make one structural change, not a break. Breaks restore energy, they don't restore identity. A structural change means renegotiating something about how the work gets done, taking on a project that puts a different version of you in the room, volunteering for something outside the lane of your current role, creating the space for the work to reflect the person you're actually becoming, not just the one you were promoted to be. This doesn't require dramatic decision. It requires honesty about a small one. Before I close, one more thing to sit with. Think of the last time someone asked you what you wanted. Not what you could handle, not what you were available for, but what you actually wanted from the work. And then think about the last time you asked yourself that question honestly. You are in the habit of being capable. That is a good habit, but it has a way of replacing the question of whether the work is right with the answer that you can do it. Those are not the same thing. You've been managing the symptoms, the extra days off, the boundaries, the mornings you protect before the meetings start. All of that matters. But if the thing underneath isn't addressed, if the work genuinely doesn't reflect who you are anymore, the symptoms keep coming back. Because rest won't fix what was never the problem. This is the Hub Brief. I'm Ankur Jain.